Hey guys, and welcome back. My name is Ashley, and today we will be breaking down how I draw heads, faces. Full disclosure, if it's not obvious by my channel already, I'm not a professional. This is something I like to do in my spare time, and this is kind of what I've learnt along the way. If I remember in editing, I'll put like a little picture here of how I originally started drawing heads maybe 10-ish years ago. So it's proof for anyone that there is hope. There is hope. It gets better. It takes practice and time. Probably could have got a little bit further if I didn't go for like 2 years in the middle of that not drawing at all. However, we're going to have a look at how I've tried to logic drawing heads to make sense, and a couple of little exercises that I did to try and help me with that. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that tripped me up was I saw, and this might work, big disclaimer, this might work for some people's style, but it did not work for me. So I just want to show you how I moved from learning from one person's art style to making something a bit more my own that I could look at and be like, oh, okay, I get it now. So one of the first things I remember seeing, hopefully this green shows up okay, was starting with a circle, as most do, cutting it in half and giving it your center line. So effectively this was the eye line, and then the bottom of the circle, or just in from the bottom of the circle, but I think originally I didn't see that it was just in from the bottom of the circle, and I was doing from the bottom and then taking that length and adding it again, and coming from the outsides of this circle, just filling into that bottom, the middle line, and then carving in a jawline. And while, yay, you can see that's a head, kind of, maybe. And then adding in, now I'm trying to remember, I think this style was kind of, you added your eyes into this, so they touched this line. And then the nose just went on this middle bit, we're just going to use basic shapes. And then the mouth went in the middle of here. And then of course you just plonk in a neck. I'm not going to be much help on neck placements because I just like to slap them in. And then because for this style the ears went from nose to the top of the eyes, which, yes. So this is kind of how I've been drawing heads. Differing it a little bit, but I finally, as far as placing these lines, found a way for me that works better. Especially something that always got me is I was one of those people that, without kind of meaning to, I would start like the hairline here, so like right above the eyes, so you would have like eyebrows, and then the hair started coming from here, and there was like no room to do anything with the bangs. So a lot of my old characters, all the hair just got pulled backwards, and that was all differentiated by the colour of their hair, which honestly is not ideal, because it was fine when I had 2 or 3 characters. But yes, this actually even still looks better than what it used to look like. That's fine. But so now, to kind of break it down, I'm going to do it in like a 3/4 view, but it's just easier to show how I'll do it in both. I'll do it in forward and 3/4, just to show you how I've kind of changed the guidelines. And I don't always use these guidelines, but it's what, like, I use them in my head. I don't always draw them down. Because like the alternative to this, which I tried to for a while because I didn't understand the whole imagining the guidelines, like when people are able just to like sketch out a perfect head shape, I was like, oh cool, all I have to do is learn how to draw this shape, and once I've learned to draw this shape, I'm fine. And I got really good at kind of drawing a head shape, but then I couldn't place anything on it because I didn't know how it was broken down. And so being able to draw from this point now is a lot easier for me, and I do it when I'm just sketching things out and I'm not too worried about what the face looks like. But initially, not knowing the structure behind it really, I don't know, it caused me a lot of grief, because then like the facial features were just blah, 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 all over the place. Anyway, so coming back to these, I still like to break the face down in a very similar fashion to this, but instead of cutting this circle in half and reaching off there, depending on the face shape that I want to draw, I use another circle. And I use this to base my guidelines. And so on a forward facing head, I kind of just put it in as little ovals, and I use that to represent the kind of sides of the face that angle in. Like, it's kind of most noticeable near your temples, because you have a bit of gap here. And this is really good too for when you're drawing hair pulled back. Like, you have the side bits on the face where you can put like sideburns or little wispy bits of hair near the ears, or whatever you like to do. So this kind of helps just to remember to leave space for that, because I've also been very guilty of doing the eyes far apart and they'll like end over here, and then I can't fit the hair in and I couldn't figure out what was going wrong. But we're learning. So much similar to this, I cut this in half, but that is actually from cutting this small circle in half, not necessarily this big one. And this will kind of change depending on how big you do this circle, because you can mess with the shape of this, so you'll either have a smaller or larger face, which this, you'll see in a minute, this is going to cut this one up. But where here I had a line for the nose, I still add that, but at the bottom of this little circle. Which, see, there's the wee gap between here. And that was like the wee gap I think, was trying to be shown here, but I didn't get it. I didn't know where they were measuring that from, or if, you know, they might have done something similar to this in the head, but this is how I've logicked it. So in a bigger face, with you represent with like a bigger circle, there's this tiny gap, but with a small one, there's a bigger gap. And I still love, you'll probably notice in a few of my pictures, if not all of them, if I draw the face front on, I haven't quite got the mirroring of the jaw lines right, so I'm still using my good old center line to help with that, so I can try and figure it out. But the other great thing about the circle is the bottom line gives you the nose, the top line gives you a hairline. So you have ensured that your character has a forehead, which really should kind of be roughly the same size. Of course, once you become a bit more familiar with how you're drawing heads, then you have the option of, I guess, pulling, squishing, making them more unique. But this, honestly, is just kind of a basic head structure. And then, similar to this, I like to take the distance between here and here and add that again. Which for this one, I'm going to put a line down here. And that's kind of, not really, but kind of midpoint. Let's move it over a little bit. Same with these ones, for the sake of having little things going. Right, so the planes here, well, that I kind of represent with these circles, remembering that the face comes in, also gives me a point to start when I draw the sides of the face, to draw them in a bit. And I still leave the back of this circle there to kind of, I guess, represent the back of the skull, and to make sure that I draw the hair off of the actual head, not straight in line with it, as if, I don't know, it was like sealed to the skull. But to break it down a little bit further, just to show you how I kind of visualize where everything goes, this first third I leave. You're gonna see that I love me some thirds. So the first third, good to go, don't need to touch it. Good. Second third I break into thirds. Third, same thing, break her into thirds. I don't actually usually draw these in, it's just something I visualize, but for the sake of making this a little bit more cohesive and hopefully it shows up, let's draw them in. So this first third, I put the eyes. This middle line between the 1, 2, 3 thirds, this is where I put my nose. So you can see, very similar to this, but more me, I think. I don't know. First third here, I like to draw the mouth. And this is also where I contour the jawline. And the second third is the chin. Because that is something I've also been very guilty of. Like, I used to draw the mouth quite low down and there's no chin. So then when it came to drawing expressions, I never had room to move this mouth or make it big expressions because there was actually no room on the face because I was drawing it in the jaw. And so I think too that has played part in why I struggle quite a bit with drawing expressive mouths. It's because initially I might have spent 3 or 4 years not giving myself the room to draw mouths that did more than smile slightly. But now bringing this out of its circle phase and into its tapered egg phase, I guess. So drawing front on, let's put a circle around this, yes. Drawing front on, I start from these circles, so that is where my face is coming down from. And then because I know now that I like to draw my jaws from here and the chin from here, I can bring this down, and this will change, this line here. Some of my characters it's quite flat, others it's quite pointed. I don't think I've ever drawn a concave one, but who knows, one day. So, but for this I'll just draw it straight down, and I draw it straight down to this line here, and then I start to bring it in. And then this, same thing, like it's that bottom third, and for the chin line, it might seem a bit big. Some people don't, well, I like kind of big chins, I guess. That's something that my drawing's teaching me. So it's quite defined. And this is quite small, like if I draw it bigger, the bigger I draw, the more these lines have helped me, because the bigger I draw, the worse I get. You can hide mistakes with little pictures. But yeah, and so we know sides of your face, and then we've got a jawline, and then we've got a chin. Not an awfully even face, but it's got some basic parts that we need to identify it, which is, it's getting there. And the same once you're in kind of like a 3/4 view, this being the forehead, I tend to draw mine quite rounded, but you could draw it quite flat. You could make it all textury if it's someone that's got textured skin, that could be quite fun. And then because I draw my eyes on this line, that could have been a good one to point out. I also draw my eyebrows on this middle line, which used to be the top of the eye line for me. So drawing it on an angle, you kind of want your brow line to stop there and then come into the eye. And then once again, cheekbones, different faces, different points, different roundness, different everything. So for the point of this, it's just going to be a basic face shape. So I like to bring it back out to the nose line and then into that chin line again. And then same, since you've got a chin that juts out a little bit, you've got your chin. And then coming back to the circle, which you don't really need to pay attention for here, I like to cut that in half, bring that down to the mouth, the jaw mark, and I do kind of round these off. And then you get kind of a head shape. I like to draw my ears from the eye line to the nose line. And I like to draw them a little bit pushed back, I guess. A little bit smaller. And then here they get a bit more of their size, which be. And then to stop the creepy floating head, add in a neck. Which once again, depending on your style, you might like quite thin necks, you might like quite thick necks. It's all good. But if we come back over to these for a little bit, see, he's going to cut that off. And yeah, so two kind of different face shapes. Just by adjusting the shape of this circle. And it does kind of, when you're on this side, it gives you that indicator too, that your facial features aren't really going to come past this edge of the circle. Just because that's, would be, I guess, that plane of your face that there aren't things on. Except maybe, like, I don't know, the side bit of your hairline. Depending on how you like to shape that. Right, but to show you how this kind of comes in a little less freaky, let's draw this one a little bit bigger. Right, that just makes us a couple of less noisy heads, I guess. So we can have a look on how to place some facial features. And just getting rid of some of those lines so they are no longer the focus. So we can have a look, you need a neck. So we can have a look on where we can put, well, how these eyes, nose, chin lines come into play. So I said, I usually start with putting the nose in. For some reason I'm kind of like, that's more or less the center of the face. I usually just put it in, make it look like a little puppo nose or something. Little circle thing. A kind of a cool tip for noses that I've only just come across, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but drawing that circle with the with like an upside down triangle in it gives you quite a good base for, like, that's the side of your nose, this is where like kind of the shading would come in if I put in like the bridge there. And then if you curve the edges of this upside down triangle, boom, you got a nose looking thing. So that's just been really helpful, especially if I don't feel like drawing a bunch of noses. If I don't feel like really drawing a nose, simplifying it to this circle works fantastic. But there we have a nose. As a rule of thumb, the eyes are kind of more or less the same width as the nose, so you can usually use that as an indicator. If you can draw straight lines, there we go. That's how big your eyes want to be. Something I'm trying at the moment to get the eyes, I'm not really happy with the way I'm drawing eyes, but I am trying to break them down into kind of, so if the third line went through that, I'm trying to break them back down into the eyeball socket and then building how I want the eyes off there, remembering that this is rounded, and I think that gives me a nice spot for the eyelid crease if there is one for whichever character, and it makes it a bit easier for me to place the iris and the pupil just because I'm seeing it as a whole circle, because quite often, not that this is a bad thing, but quite often I'll see, and I've done this before, quite flat irises, and then when you kind of fill that out, the iris is in a circle, it's a oval. Which, for if that's the style that you're looking for, fantastic, you've nailed it. But for me, I really want this more rounded eye. So actually having an eye there and then that gives the iris and the pupil like grounding, because then I've got to remember that the pupil actually goes like more or less in the middle of this iris, and boom, something that remotely looks like an eye, which is, you know, as long as someone can identify what it's meant to be, I think you are on the right track. It doesn't have to be perfect. Your stylizing of how you will draw it yourself will make it its own thing. And it's something I've heard a lot from, whose YouTube was it? Draw with Waffles. Like, we're imitating real life. We're not taking a photo to replicate it, we're imitating it. And because we all, especially like your biggest reference is yourself, like if you need help breaking down where these facial bits go, facial features go, sure, you could go get a book. You could print off some pages and break down a face. Probably easiest thing, and I've done this before, which can be quite fun, is just go look in a mirror. And if you have a whiteboard marker, break down your reflection. You know, like some people can just do that by looking at their face in a mirror and be like, oh, okay, so this is about here and this is about here. I'm not very good at that. So I like to draw on the bathroom mirror, because yes. And you know, sometimes it does pay to wipe that off so you don't scare the next person using it, because they're very confused what's going on. But that's a different story. So yeah. And yeah. So the cool thing also about breaking this down into a small oval and your eye into a circle is when it comes to changing perspective, and this will kind of work later on as well, like when you're drawing more angled faces, like looking up, looking down, is when you think about angling an eye or a facial feature, it can be a bit daunting. But if you actually think about, like, what does a circle look like on its side, or like, for example, on a 3/4 view face, this eye and this eye are at slightly different angles, because this is closer to you and this is not. And while it's not that obvious on a slight skew, you can actually change your circles to match that. So I would draw these ones just slightly a bit more squished than what I would draw. Well, this one I might keep normal. This one I would skew a little bit. And then that comes through when you're drawing your eyes, which just looks really creepy panda at the moment because I've kept the circles there. But then when you've got your brow line, you can just put your brows in however you like to draw them. I kind of like to draw them like this. I'm trying to get better at drawing thicker eyebrows, because I went through that phase where eyebrows were just a line. And while sometimes that fits a character, I'm kind of into getting more into drawing thicker, more expressive eyebrows, and so far so good. Unfortunately at the moment, I just said earlier, went for a long time not drawing expressive mouths, so I don't have any good tips for drawing mouths, apart from that I like to draw the outside bits a bit thicker and kind of have them disappear as they come to the middle, and that I like to draw the bottom lip. So if you guys have any advice for me, please put it in the comments below, because that would be fantastic. Because this lady here is struggling. The struggle is real. The faces are only like 2/3 complete because the bottom third's just munched. But rule of thumb with the mouths that I kind of stick to, is that like halfway through the eyes, I don't draw the mouth any further out than that. Sometimes I don't even draw it to that, but I like to stay to that point. And then the ears, from the middle of the eyes to the nose, which ears are I didn't actually realize until I started looking at it how stylized ears can be. It's amazing. That's another one to play with until you find how you like to draw it. I personally like kind of this shaped ear. And then I do this. And literally figured this out just by touching my own ear, which is also really interesting for the fact that I don't actually know what it looked. I don't think I've ever even looked at my ears, despite all the piercings I have. This is more or less what I feel. Like, more to it than this, but these are the kind of features that stick out to me the most and that I try and include. One of the kind of other ways that I like to break things down simply, and I don't really use this as I'm drawing, but I use it as kind of a separate exercise as far as drawing faces on angles and things, because obviously this is only 2 angles, and these are probably the 2 angles that every freaking book's gonna show you because they seem to be, I don't know, the most popular, is thinking about the face like a bent piece of paper. And this works really well. You can actually do this with a piece of paper and make a little, because a lot of places you'll see break down the nose like this, and so from a side view it would be like this, that 3/4 view like this. So if you think about the nose in this kind of, is it a prism shape, and then apply that to a piece of paper. So if this is your piece of paper and you just chuck a nose in the middle, doesn't have to be accurate. Think about if you had this piece of paper in your hand. I do not have a piece of paper near me. Wait, what's this? Aha! Piece of paper. If you think about it on like this kind of curved angle, what are the angles you can do? And you've got to think about, like, this area here would be blocked out. So if we were looking at it like this, I'm going to have to hold this off here a wee bit just so I can see it. You've got your curve, this comes right down here. We know that this bit is going to be like your skull. The middle of this page is actually about here. For this bit, actually could probably actually break this down with all your however you break a face down. But for the purpose of this, we're making a cross. Perfect. So we can see that it's slightly, it was on that kind of angle. And then how would a prism fit into that? And you've got kind of like your nose shape. So then you can do a whole bunch of these, whether it's actual like positions a face would go or not, doesn't really matter. But I might actually try this with this. You can actually put a little nose on here, I guess, just to be like, this is where I need to draw that. And it's actually really helpful. As far as then getting it to look something more like this, that is up to you and your style. Like, I would probably have to put in my circles knowing that this is that. So that would make the eyes go here and the hairline, oh, that is my hairline. Easy. So that means I would have to break down the rest of this, which is actually really hard because I don't draw faces on many angles. Look at that, something new I need to work on again. But you've got a kind of face looking thing. So that's a really cool warm-up exercise I like to do, although it's actually, it's kind of fun when I'm like flicking through old sketchbooks or old bits of papers, whatever, and I just see pages of these bent pages of bent pages. That's great, because then we know too, like, that bit there I would chisel down more, but that is like the underside bit where your face connects to your, I don't know what I'm saying, connects to your neck. It's gonna work different depending on your style, depending on how you do things, but it's also kind of a nice way, especially if you can get yourself a physical piece of paper, to try even subtly different angles. And you know, sometimes if you're just looking for a new way, once you like wrap your head around heads and you're like, I want to draw more, but I want to practice more, but you know, I've hit a bit of a wall because I can draw a forward, I can draw a side view, I can draw a 3/4. Grab yourself a piece of paper and just play around with it. Draw the back of the head even. But yeah, it that's quite fun, even though, as I said, I don't draw a lot of angles, but I do draw a lot of paper face angles, so I feel like when it actually comes to the few pictures that I do draw on slightly different angles, I have a slightly better grasp of what I'm up to, just because I spun a piece of paper around and apparently that helps my brain think. I suppose then what I'm working on now and for into the future is the shading of the faces. So yeah, that's just gonna be an ongoing mission forever and always. But this is kind of, actually I feel like I'd bring that in more. Yeah, and that's the cool thing, since it's a sketchbook, you just play around, have a go, like even if it turns out like this, where I haven't even filled this whole page, but I've kind of got down what I needed to for today, like that's good too. And now I've just gone on a ramble because I guess I got slightly excited about this, which has just stepped up my usual practice of this, which is heaps of fun. I still don't know quite what this is, but that's fine, because that line would actually probably be there and then, yep, too far. So yeah, this is what I have to show you today. I like this head. That is what I've learnt today. Another random tip, has nothing to do with this. Drawing, I know this says Jazz Art Color, but it's watercolor, and I found it very satisfying to, when I found maybe like a sketch that I like, to then just go in and play with the colors. I've recently learned, you know, put the water on the outside and move it in, so you push the pigment into the darkest place and you're not dragging it out. I say as I put it straight into the darkest place. I'm done. Right, thanks for watching, guys. I will see you in the next video. Have some fun with paper and pencils. Bye bye.